The Book of Heaven. Volume 18. My Jesus, give me strength, you who see all the reluctance I feel to write, to the point that, if it were not holy obedience and fear of displeasing you, I wouldn't write a single word anymore. Your long privations make me foolish and unable to do anything. Therefore, I need a lot of help to put on paper what your will whispers in my ear. Give me the hand and always stay with me. I was merging into the divine will and trying to give thanks to God for all that He has accomplished in creation, out of love for creatures. The thought came to me that this way of praying did not please my Jesus and that it was a pure product of my imagination. Moving in me, my ever-kind Jesus said to me, "My daughter, you must know that giving thanks to God for all the things He has created is far from displeasing God. That this is rather a divine right and one of the first duties of creatures. Creation was made out of love for creatures. Our love for them was so great that, if it had been necessary, we would have created as many heavens, suns, stars, lands, seas, plants, etc., as there were going to be creatures, so that each would have had its own universe. In fact, at first, Adam was the only one to enjoy the benefits of creation. And if we have not multiplied the universes, it is because, in reality, each creature can fully enjoy creation as if it were its own. Who couldn't say, "The sun is mine and enjoy its light as much as he desires"? Or "The water is mine and use it as much as he needs"? Or "The land, the sea, the fire, the air, are mine," and so on? If some things may be missing from man, or if his life is sometimes hard, it is because of sin which, hindering access to my benefits, does not allow the things I have created to be generous to ungrateful creatures. Everything created is a manifestation of God's love for His creatures. They have a duty to express to God their love and gratitude for this great blessing. It is even their first duty to the Creator. Failure to fulfill this duty would be a grave fraud on their part towards the Creator. This duty is so important that my Heavenly Mother, who had so much at heart our glory, our defense, and our interests, went through all the things created, from the smallest to the greatest, to, in the name of all creatures, lay a seal there of love, of glory and thanks to the Creator. Following my mother, my humanity has also fulfilled this holy duty. This led my Father to be kind to guilty mankind. So there are my mother's prayers and mine. Don't you also want to repeat these prayers? In fact, that is why I have called you to live in my will. For you to associate with us and for you to repeat our actions. After these words of Jesus, I began to go through all the things created in order to affix a seal on each one. Of love, of glory and of gratitude, dedicated to the Creator on behalf of all creatures. It seemed to me to see the seals there of my Mother Empress and of my beloved Jesus. These seals created a magnificent harmony between heaven and earth, binding the Creator to creatures. They were like lovely little celestial sonatas. My sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, all created things result from an act of our will. They cannot change their place or their role. They are like mirrors reflecting the qualities of God. Some its power, others its beauty, others His goodness, others its immensity, others its light, etc. In their mute voices, they tell men how much God loves them. Like other creatures, man was created by an act of our will. However, in his case, there are more. It is an emanation of our breast, a part of ourselves. We created it with a free will, so that it can grow ever more in beauty, wisdom, and virtue. In our likeness, He can multiply His possessions and graces. Oh! If the Son had a free will and could make 2 sons from 1, 4 from 2, what glory! What honor would He not give to His Creator and what glory would she not give to Himself? How many things the created objects are incapable of accomplishing, because they have no free will and Because they were created to serve man. All our love has been focused on man. We have made all of creation available to him. We organized everything according to him, so that he can use our works as stepping stones to approach us, to know and love us. Also, what is not our pain? When we see it below the objects created. When we see his beautiful soul ugly by sin, horrible to see. As if all the things we created weren't enough to satisfy our love for man, and in order to preserve his free will, we gave him the most precious gift, our will. We gave him this gift as a first principle of his life and of its actions. Having to grow in grace and beauty, he needed this supreme will. This was not only to keep company with his human will, but had to replace her to direct her action. Hellas, Lahoma meprise ce grand cadeau. Ilna mem pavolo le conatra. Dans la misure où l'homme accepte notre volonté comme principita sa vie. Il croit continuellement en grâce, en lumière et en but. Il répond au but premier de la création, et. Nous recevons par oui la gloire qui nous est due pour toute la création. J'aime fusionnize dans la divine volonté et, avec mon défaillable amour, j'il waste Jesus pour tout cek, dans la création, il a fait pour la race humaine. In order to give more value to my love, Jesus moved in me and began to accompany me in what I was doing. He said to me, "My daughter, all created things were made for man. These things don't have feet, but they work. They move. Either to find man, or to let oneself be found by him. The light of the sun leaves the heights of the heavens to come to man, enlighten him and warm him. Water is made available to man to refresh him, quench his thirst and even enter his interior. Seeds sneak into the ground to produce their fruits for the benefit of man. There is no created thing that does not experience an attraction, emotion, towards the being that was destined for it by the Creator. My will watches that order and harmony reign everywhere in creation, for the benefit of man. Nevertheless, who thanks my will that him sunlight to illuminate and warm it, water to quench thirst, bread to meet his hunger, flowers and fruits to comfort him, and so many other things for his happiness? Since my will does everything for man, is it not right that man should do everything to accomplish my will? Oh! If you knew what a feast there is in the things created when I come to serve the creature who lives in my will. My will operating in creatures and my will operating in created things. Kiss lovingly and sing a hymn of worship to the Creator for the great prodigy of creation. Created things feel honored when they serve a creature who lives in the will that animates them. On the other hand, my will feels a sense of affliction vis-a-vis these same things created, when they have to serve creatures who do not live in my will. This explains why the elements sometimes stand against man, to hit it and to chastise him. These elements feel superior to man, because man has placed himself below them by leaving the will of the Creator. They themselves have remained faithful to this will since the beginning of creation. After these words of Jesus, I began to reflect on the feast of the Assumption of my Heavenly Mother. In a tender and touching tone, my sweet Jesus said to me, "My daughter, the real name of this feast should be the Feast of the Divine Will. It is the human will that closed heaven, broke the bonds with the Creator, opened the door to misery and suffering, and put an end to the heavenly feast which the creature was to enjoy. My Mother Queen, by constantly fulfilling the will of Jehovah, it can be said that his life was only divine will, opened heaven and restored to heaven the festivities with the creatures. With every act she did in the supreme will, it was a feast in heaven. Suns formed to adorn this feast, and melodies were created to enchant the heavenly Jerusalem. The real cause of these festivities was the eternal will operating in my Heavenly Mother. This will operated in her prodigies which astonished heaven and earth, chained him to the Lord with indissoluble bonds of love, and delighted the Word in the very womb of his mother. Enchanted, the angels repeated, "Where does such glory, honor, greatness and wonders come from in this creature? Yet it comes from exile." Stunned and trembling, they recognized that it was the will of their Creator that was working in it, and they said, "Holy, holy, holy! Honor and glory to the will of our sovereign Lord. 3 times holy is the one who lets this supreme will operate in her. Above all, it is my will that is celebrated on the feast of the Assumption of my most holy Mother. It was my will that raised my mother to such a height. Everything that could have happened to him would have been nothing without the wonders that my will operated in it. It is my will that gives him, conferred divine fecundity and made her the mother of the Word. It was my will that did it. Embrace all creatures. Become the mother of all and love each one with divine maternal love. It was my will that made her queen of all creatures. When my mother arrived in heaven on the day of the Assumption, my will was greatly honored and glorified for the whole of creation. And a great feast, which has not ceased since, began in heaven. Although heaven had already been opened by me, and although many saints were already there, it was when the heavenly Queen, my beloved mother, arrived in heaven that this great feast of my will began. My mother was the first cause of this feast, she in whom my will had accomplished so many wonders and who had observed it so perfectly throughout his earthly life. Oh! As all heaven praised the eternal will, when appeared in the middle of the heavenly court this sublime Queen all haloed with the light of the sun of the divine will. We saw her all adorned with the power of the supreme Fiat, since there was not a single beat of her heart on which this Fiat was not printed. Astonished, all the celestial beings looked at her, saying, "Go up, climb even higher. It is right that the one who so honored the supreme Fiat, by which we find ourselves in the heavenly fatherland, has the highest throne and let her be our queen." The greatest honor she received that day was that the divine will was honored by it. My days are becoming more and more bitter because of the deprivation of my sweet Jesus. All that remains is his will. This precious legacy that his many visits left to my poor soul. Here I am now alone, completely forgotten by the one who is all my life. Yet it seems to me that he could not be without me and that I could not be without him. So what happened to the one who loved me so much? What did I do to make him leave me? Ah! Jesus, come back, I can't take it anymore. While I was so sorry to have lost the one who was all my hope and all my joy, Jesus imposed himself on me, that I may continue my actions in his adorable will. Il m'empêcha presque de me plaindre de sa privation. Ceci me laissa petrifié, sans le moindre réconfort, ni céleste ni terrestre. As I continued in this terrible state, I thought of the sufferings Jesus endured during his passion. Showing himself briefly, he said to me, "My daughter, through my sufferings, I was always the same. My gaze was always soft. My always serene face. My words always calm and dignified. I had such a quality in my manners that men could have recognized that I was their Redeemer just by seeing my behavior. Although, by their intensity and number, my sufferings would have been enough to annihilate me completely, it was not so. In the midst of my enemies, I dwelt like a majestic sun. With my usual serenity and peaceful behavior, being constantly equal to oneself, is the proper of God and the true sons of God. This way of being imprints a divine character in the soul and reveals his purity and holiness. On the other hand, an unstable mood reveals a heart tyrannized by passions and makes the person unpleasant for everyone. I therefore recommend that you always be the same. The same with me. The same with you and the same with others. The same also in suffering, including in the suffering of the deprivation of me. Even if this deprivation forms in you and around you clouds of pain, your equal ways will be the light that will scatter these clouds and will reveal that, although hidden, I live in you. After these words of my adorable Jesus, I continued to reflect on his sufferings during his passion, with, in my heart, the nail of his deprivation. He was all silent and so distressed that he aroused my pity. I said to him, "My love, why do you remain silent? It seems to me that you don't want to talk to me anymore, or even tell me your secrets and sorrows." All kindness, though afflicted, he said to me, "My daughter, silence sometimes says more than words. Keeping silent is the decision. The one who does not want to be deterred. A father who is with a son he loves very much, in the midst of other sons who are undisciplined and whom he wants to correct. Do you believe that? When I don't come to see you and when I do not make you participate in my suffering, it means nothing. Ah! My daughter, on the contrary, this is something great. When I don't come, it is that my justice is charged with punishments to strike man. All past evils, earthquakes, wars, are few things in comparison. The tribulations that are coming, of the great war and the revolutions that are being prepared. Men commit so many sins that they do not deserve. May I make you participate in my sufferings to free them from the punishments they deserve. Therefore, be patient. My will compensate for the lack of my visible presence, even if, hidden, I am in you. If I did not do so, you would not have the peace necessary to continue your usual tours in my will. In fact, it is I who, hidden in you, make these tours in you. You do them with the one you don't see. When my justice is finished with the punishments, I will come as before. Therefore, be brave, wait for me and do not be afraid." While he was talking to me, I found myself out of my body in the midst of nations. In almost all of them, one could see preparations for a war. The invention of new fighting techniques that arouse fear just by seeing them. Le grand aveuglement des hommes. L'amina et à agir comme des bêtes et. L'empêcher de voir chuen blessant les autres, ilsse blessant yux memes. Ensuite, tout effrayé, jai réintégrer monde corps, sans monde Jesus et avec un clou dans monde cœur. Parce que ilm avec laisser tout seul. J'ai me tordes de douleur. Monde du Jesus boogie en moi. Superant devant monde pitoyable état, il me dit. Ma fille, sois calme, j'ai suis en toi, genetai policy. D'alors, comment pourrais je laisser? Regarde, ma volonté est pour tout. Si tu es dans ma volonté, genai aucun endroit ou aller pour me distancer de toi. Il me faut rendre ma volonté limitée, ce qui est impossible. Done. Sois certain que genetai policy et. Immerse yourself evermore in the immensity of my will. Following my usual way, I accompanied my sweet Jesus in the sufferings of his passion. I offered the torture caused to me by his deprivation, as an attestation of my love for him and to comfort him. My beloved God raised his right hand inside me. With his fingers, he let blood and light flow on my poor soul so affected by the torment of his deprivation, to the point that Jesus was moved. To comfort me, he said to me, "My daughter, courage, do not fear. Whoever lives in my will lives at the center of my humanity. Because, in the same way as the sun is in the center of its sphere, my divine will is at the center of my humanity. And, in the same way that, without leaving his sphere where he sits majestically, the sun spreads its light all over the earth, my divine will in my humanity radiates on each person and on every place on earth. As man had broken his bond with the divine will, it was appropriate that, on his behalf, my humanity takes the first steps to remake this link. Thus, by his life, his words, and his sufferings, my humanity has brought man back to his Creator, so that it conforms again to the order for which it was created. And By the fact that the soul that lives in my will is at the center of my humanity, everything I have done and suffered is directed towards this soul. If she is weak, I give her strength. If it is soiled, my blood washes it and beautifies it. My prayers sustain her. My arms hold it firmly and cover it with the fruit of my labors. In short, everything is running to defend and help this soul. And this is why the thought of my sufferings is as natural for you. Since you live in my will, my sufferings surround you like clouds of light and graces. In the sphere of my humanity, my will places my works, my steps, my words, my blood, my wounds, my sorrows, and everything I have done as an action to challenge the man and give him the necessary help and means, that he may be saved and return to the bosom of my will. If my will had challenged man directly, he would have been afraid. Instead, I chose to attract him. By all that I have achieved and suffered, as so many encouragements and means, to make him come back in my arms. Living at the center of my humanity, the soul that lives in my will, take full advantage of the fruits of all that I have done and suffered. My will fully realizes in it the purpose for which it was created. As for the one who does not live in my will, he may very well find a way to be saved, but he does not enjoy all the fruits of creation and redemption. Following these words of my kind Jesus, I said to him, "My love, I am confused. You tell me that I live in your will, and then you leave me. Ah! What a harsh martyrdom you inflict on me. You alone maintain the breath of life in my poor soul. As soon as you leave me, everything changes. I no longer recognize myself, everything dies in me, light dies, love dies. Oh! Please have mercy on me and do not leave me, I can't take it anymore." Cutting me off and sighing, my Jesus said to me, "My daughter, be calm. Stop these words that hurt my heart. Oh! How I would like to remove this nail from your heart. I know, for the one who loves me, this nail is unbearable, he continually kills mercilessly. Drop that thought that I might leave you. You have to convince yourself that I do not leave you, but that I sink deeper into you and let me remain silent in the little ship of your soul. The truth is that nothing is changed in you. Everything that was there is still there in perfect order. All it takes is a little movement on my part, and I'm with you. And then, how could I leave you? He who makes my will and lives in it is completely bound by the links that attach creatures to the Creator, souls saved to the Redeemer, and souls sanctified to the Sanctifier. My will seals all these bonds and makes the creature inseparable from me. Therefore, be assured that your Jesus will never leave you." While he was saying that, I saw many rays of light coming to my heart. Some were related to all created things, others to all that Jesus did and suffered, and others to the sacraments. May everything be for the glory of God, the good of my soul and of all souls. Amen. As usual, I merged into God's most holy will. While I was working to place I loves you on all the things created, I wanted to that my Jesus sees and hears only these I love you, or that he sees and hears everything through these I love you. A thought came to my mind. I behave like a child who can't say anything other than her little heart-learned boniment. What do these I love you constantly repeat? Then, emerging from my interior, my adorable Jesus showed himself, with I love you printed on all his divine person. On his lips, his face, his forehead, his eyes, his chest, his hands, the tips of his fingers, in short everywhere. He said to me tenderly, "My daughter, aren't you happy? Let none of your I love you be lost, but that, rather, they are all imprinted in me. And do you know all the good that results from it? You must know that when a soul decides to do good, to exercise a virtue, it gives birth in its heart to the seed of this virtue. Subsequently, by repeating his actions, it forms water, to water the resulting plant from this seed. The more she repeats her actions, the more water the plant receives, grows in health and beauty, and quickly comes to produce fruit. On the other hand, if the soul shows little ardor to repeat its actions, the plant suffocates and, if it manages to come out of the ground, it is puny and does not produce any fruit. Poor plant that lacks water to grow. My sun does not rise on it to fertilize it, ripen it and make him give beautiful fruits. If the soul repeats its actions incessantly, it produces a lot of water to water its plant and my sun rises on her every time she receives water. I rejoice very much to see it so filled with strength and grows so quickly. I raise his branches to me, and seeing its many fruits, I pick them with pleasure. And I like to rest in his shadow. The repetition of your I love you provides you with water to grow in you the tree of love. The repetition of acts of patience engenders in you the tree of patience. The repetition of your deeds in my will forms water to grow in you the divine and eternal tree of my will. Nothing is formed by a single act or only a few acts. It takes constant and repeated actions. Only your Jesus can form things, including the greatest, by a simple act. Because it possesses the creative power. It is by dint of repeating the same act that the creature can, little by little, form the good it desires. By habit, a virtue becomes natural. This is the case in the natural order. A person cannot become a teacher without reading vowels and consonants many times. She must work tirelessly to saturate her mind, her will and her heart with all the science necessary to be able to teach others. A person cannot be satisfied if he does not eat bite by bite the food he needs. A farmer cannot harvest if he has not worked day after day for a long time in his field. This is the case for many other things. Repeating the same act over and over again is a sign that the person really wants to achieve their goal. Therefore, repeat incessantly, without ever getting tired. Then, having found myself out of my body, my sweet Jesus transported me to all places where, while he was on earth, he acted, suffered, prayed, and also wept. Everything was in action, everything he did. And my beloved God said to me, my daughter, daughter of my supreme will, my will wants you to participate in everything. What you see are all the deeds I have done on earth. My will keeps the fruits of these acts in abeyance, because creatures are not willing to receive them. This is largely due to the fact that they do not know what I have done. See my many nocturnal prayers punctuated. Bitter tears and burning sighs for the salvation of all. They are waiting to pour their fruits on the creatures. My daughter, enter into them and let my will flood you with these fruits. My will keeps in reserve all the sorrows of my childhood, all the inner acts of my hidden life, who are wonders of grace and holiness, all the humiliations, glories, and sorrows of my public life, and all the hidden sorrows of my passion. Their fruits are in suspense, having been picked only partially by the creatures. It's in the souls who live in my will, and only in these souls, that they will be totally dumped. So come in all my actions and in my sorrows, that my will may find in you its full fulfillment. I want nothing between you and me to be on hold. In the same way that I want to be able to tell you everything I want to find in you my own will, so that nothing prevents me from giving you everything I want. While Jesus was talking to me like this, I went through each of his deeds and became all transformed, covered. His actions, of his prayers, of his tears and of his sentences. Who could say everything I've been through? I hope that my beloved Jesus will give me the grace to perfectly match his adorable will. Amen. I was in my usual state. My poor mind suddenly found itself in an extremely high mood. It seemed to me to see the divinity and on one of the lap of the Heavenly Father. The Queen Mother is dead, lifeless. Any surprise, I say to myself. My mother is dead, but what a wonderful death, to die on the lap of her Creator. Then, on closer inspection, I saw that the will of Mother Mary was detached from his body and se trouvait dans les mains du Père Céleste. Abasourdi, je n'arrive pas à comprendre. Alors, un voix provenant du trône divin dit. Lestl parmi tous les élus. She is the very beautiful. She is the only creature who gave us her will and laid it lifeless on our lap, in our hands. As for us, in exchange, we gave him the gift of our will. We couldn't give him a bigger gift. Since the acquisition of this supreme will gave him power to bring the word down to earth and to initiate the redemption of humanity. A human will would have had no power of attraction over us. But a divine will in this incomparable creature has delighted and conquered us. Unable to resist, we have yielded to his pleas and we have brought the word down to earth. That said, we expect you to. You come to die on the Father's other knee. By giving us your will too. Subsequently, seeing in our hands your dead will as if it no longer existed for you. We will give you the gift of ours and through you, that is to say through our will in you, our Fiat will live again on earth. We will look at your two wills, that of the Divine Mother and yours, as a precious pledge. Suitable for a ransom. For all other human wills. Then the voice ceased to be heard. I found myself on the Father's other knee in the act of breathing my last sigh. Then I reintegrated my body. I am unable to say how I felt. But I can only say that I prayed with all my heart for that my will never come back to me again and may only the will of God have life in me. Ah! This will owns all property, perfectly reflects Jesus in souls, embraces everything and gives perfect return to God for his works of creation, redemption, and sanctification. She can accomplish anything, she is the Queen who governs everything. Later, I saw my Heavenly Mother with her baby Jesus in her arms. She kissed him and placed him on her breast to feed him with her very pure milk. I told him, "My mother, to me you don't give anything. Oh! Let me at least to place my I love you between your mouth and that of Jesus when you kiss him. So that my little one I love you accompanies everything you do." She replied, "My daughter, do it, put on your little one I love you. Not only on our lips, but also on everything that happens between him and me. You should know that all that I did for my son, I also did it for souls who would live in the divine will because, being in this holy will, they were going to be able to enjoy these things as much as Jesus. So when I embraced my son, I embraced all these souls. If you want me to repeat for you what I did for my son, make sure you are always in his will. And I will be generous in my favors to you." After 2 painful games spent in the deprivation of my greatest good Jesus, I felt him move in me. It seems to me that he was sitting inside me, his head resting on my shoulder, in a position to talk to me. I held it on myself and, in a total abandonment, I put myself in an attitude of listening. It seems to me that he said to me, "My daughter, my will is more than bodily nourishment. This gives strength to the body, provides it with heat, brings life to its members, increases the amount of his blood, revives the intelligence of the person and encourages him to new work and sacrifices. On the other hand, the one who neglects to feed his body well, feels fatigue in all its limbs, lack of blood and heat, has an intelligence that tends to get confused, is prone to melancholy and laziness, and not to sacrifice oneself in anything. Poor individual, he lacks life in his whole being. This is so true that when a person has a fatal disease, it stops feeding and she thus moves towards death. As established by eternal wisdom, the soul also needs food. The divine will is for her a delicious food. This food makes her strong in the search for good and overflowing with love for his God. It fills the soul with vivacity, pushing it to grow in all virtues. to undertake new works and to make great sacrifices. It is reflected in the intelligence of the person. It leads him to know his Creator better and better and to look more and more like Him. Divine blood abounds in this soul, making divine life grow in it. In addition, this food is available at every moment, with each breath, day and night, in all things, as many times as you want. Unlike body food, we do not have to fear that if we take too much, we may be inconvenienced. On the contrary, the more we take, the more one is fortified and the more one believes in the likeness of one's Creator. The one who never takes this food is exposed to death eternally. As for the one who rarely takes it, he is weak and fickle in good, cold in love, poor in divine blood. The divine life is anemic in him. The light of his intelligence is so dim that he knows almost nothing about his Creator. And that, therefore, his resemblance to him is weak. There is a lack of vitality in the search for good, sometimes it lacks patience, sometimes charity, sometimes detachment from everything. In short, deprived of the nourishment of my will. The virtues are as if stifled in this person. Ah! If we could see the private soul of this heavenly food, we would cry over them, so many are miseries and garbage of which it is covered. One would be right to sympathize with a creature lacking bodily nourishment, since, generally, this is the result of the fact that she lacks the money to get it. But the soul that deprives itself of the food of my will deserves condemnation, since it rejects a food which gives it life and which is offered to him free of charge. A little later, as I had heard that people were subjected to opposition, humiliation, or otherwise, my sweet Jesus said to me, "My daughter, when the body contains bad blood infecting the good, it is necessary to resort to punctures. Use bloodsuckers or bloodletting, so that the bad blood is evacuated. Otherwise, there would be a danger that the person would become paralyzed for the rest of his or her life. Similarly, the soul that is not continually nourished by my will, risk of being infected by all kinds of bad trends. It is necessary to have recourse to the medicine of humiliation to bring out the bad tendency of self-love, to the bites of leeches to bring out the bad tendency of vainglory, to bleeding to be freed from small attachments to certain people doing good. Otherwise, these bad trends could become entrenched to the point to infect all the good that the person does, and to paralyze her for the rest of her life. Punctures always do good. They are the sentinels of the heart that maintain pure blood and the intentions of the soul in the right way. If all did good only with the intention of conforming to my will, the punctures would not be necessary. Because my will is the safeguard against all bad trends, punctures also play the role of punishments for those who do not feed enough on my will. This morning, when he came, my sweet Jesus said to me, "My daughter, I bring you the kiss of all heaven." He kissed me and continued, "Being in my will, heaven is the echo of all my deeds, that is, it repeats everything I do." Then he disappeared. A few hours later, he came back and added, "My daughter, give me back the kiss I gave you. For all heaven, my mother, the Heavenly Father and the Holy Spirit are waiting for this return. Indeed, as, through my will, an act from them has joined a creature in exile, they long after a return from this creature, through this same will." That said, he brought his mouth closer to mine, and almost trembling, I gave him my kiss. This one produced a harmonious sound never heard before, which rose very high and spread over all things and creatures. Then, with inexpressible love, he said to me, "How beautiful is an act performed in my will! What power, what greatness, what a wonder! He reaches everything in heaven and on earth, and all of creation. Angels and saints are joined by him. Such an act must have a return, otherwise all would be in pain. By finding that a divine act in which they participated did not have a return, like a loud sound, an act done in my will First attracts everyone's attention. Then repeats and repeats itself gently. Through him, all detect a soul acting in my will and they receive the glory and honor of a divine act. Then he disappeared. As for me, I merged into the divine will. Grieving for each of the offenses made to my Jesus by humans, from the first man who came to earth to the last who will come there. By asking forgiveness for these offenses. While I was doing this, I thought to myself, my Jesus, my love, is not enough for me to sadden me and to ask forgiveness for all these offenses. But I would like to annihilate all sin, so that you will never be offended again. Moving in me, my Jesus said to me, my daughter, I have felt a special penalty for every fault committed by humans, and I have associated with each one a pardon for the culprit. These forgivenesses are pending in my will, and when a sinner feels sorrow for a fault committed, my sorrow joins his and I immediately grant him forgiveness. However, how many offend me and feel no pain? Thank you, my daughter, to come in my will to accompany my sorrows and forgiveness. Continue to flow in my will and by holding my sorrows and forgiveness. Shouts for each offense, pain, forgiveness, so that I am not alone in grieving and forgiving, but that I am accompanied by the little girl of my will. Being in my usual state, I had the sensation that my sweet Jesus was lying inside me in agony. I heard his breathing dying and began to agonize with him. After we had suffered together for a while, he said to me, my daughter, that a person think of my passion and compassion for my suffering is comforting to me. Feeling accompanied by a person for which I have suffered so much and that I love so much alleviates my suffering. On the other hand, if I stay alone, having no one to whom to entrust my sentence and in whom to pour out the fruit of my sufferings, I feel oppressed by my suffering and love. Thus, when my love can no longer stand, I come to you for suffer my passion and repeat all that I have done and suffered in my humanity. May a creature revive my passion and that another only thinks of my passion by sympathizing with my suffering. There is a difference for me. In the first case, I feel that the creature really relives what I experienced and gives me a return of divine life and in the second, I simply feel the company of a creature. But, do you know in whom I can really repeat my passion? In the person who has my will as the center of his life. My will is a simple act and not a succession of acts. This simple act is as if fixed at a point that never moves, eternity. Its circumference is so immense that nothing can escape it. He is the first act, the eternal act. Everything comes from him. He embraces everything and all with one embrace. Creation, redemption, and sanctification are one act for my will. It has the power to make all acts its own, as if they were one. The creature who lives in my will has in his possession this simple act. It is therefore not surprising that she takes part in the sufferings of my passion. Through this simple act, she joins her Creator in the act of creating. Becoming one with his God. She creates with him, thus participating in the glory of creation and the Creator. She loves all things created as her own things. In a surge of love, she said to her God, what is yours is mine and what is mine is yours. Glory, honor and love to my Creator. By this simple act, the creature makes the redemption his own. By putting on my sufferings as if they were his own, she associates herself with everything I have done, my prayers, my words, and my work. She overflows with love for me, sympathizes with my suffering and makes reparations. Through this simple act, she finds everything, appropriates everything, and places her I love you everywhere. That is why living in my will is the prodigy of wonders. God and all of heaven are delighted to see a tiny creature swimming in all the things of its Creator. Like a ray of sunshine, it spreads everywhere and in everyone. Consequently, even at the cost of your life, never get out of this simple act of my will, so that I can redo through you. creation, redemption, and sanctification. Even in nature, there are things that mimic this simple act. In heaven, since it was created by God, the sun always performs the same simple act. Its light and warmth are so intimately linked that they are inseparable. It is constantly in the act of dispensing its benefits to creatures. Although he seems to be doing only a simple act, the circumference of his light is so great that it embraces the whole earth. In his embrace, he produces innumerable effects, which make the life and glory of all things created. He watches over all plants. To one, it ensures the development, to another the ripening of the fruits, to another the sweetness, to another perfume. It can be said that the whole earth lives by the sun and that every plant, even the smallest blade of grass, receives from it its growth and fruits. However, it never changes. It derives his glory from the one simple act he constantly performs. The human being also has something akin to a simple act. His heartbeat. These constitute a simple act. The heart knows nothing but to beat. Human life begins with a heartbeat. The effects of heartbeat are countless. By beating, the heart circulates blood throughout the body, including its most distant parts. It gives strength to the feet so that they can walk, to the hands so that they can work, to the mouth so that she can speak, to the brain so that it can think. It gives warmth and strength to the whole person. It all depends on the heartbeat. If they become deficient, the person loses his energy and the desire to work, his intelligence weakens. It is full of problems, general malaise. And if the heart stops beating, life itself stops. The power of an act that is constantly repeated is great. This is especially true with regard to the eternal God who has done everything by virtue of a single simple act. This simple act has no past, no present, no future. He who lives in my will is there. As well as in human beings, the heart beats constantly. My will beats ceaselessly in the depth of the soul, but by a single beat. This is how my will transmits to the soul His beauty, His holiness, His strength, His love, His goodness, His wisdom. This act of my will encloses heaven and earth. As is the case for blood circulation, its effects reach everything, including the highest and most remote places. This act acts vigorously and reigns completely, a prodigy that only a God can perform. This act makes us discover new heavens, new abysses of graces, and surprising truths. If one asked the soul where all this comes from, she would answer, like the sun with its light and heat, heartbeat in humans, and the simple act of the eternal God. I only do one thing, constantly. I fulfill the will of God and I live in this will. This is my secret and my contentment. After these words, Jesus disappeared. A little later, I found myself out of my body with little baby Jesus in my arms. He was very pale and all trembling. His lips were blue. He was cold and very exhausted, to the point of pity. He seemed to have taken refuge in my arms for me to protect him. I squeezed it on my heart to warm it. I took his little hands and his little feet in my hands and I squeezed them so that they would cease to tremble. I kissed him time and time again and told him that I loved him very, very much. While I was doing this, he regained his colors and ceased to tremble. He fully recovered and pressed more against me. Then, while I thought he would always stay with me, I was surprised to see that he was beginning to come down from my knees. So, I started crying as I held him by one arm and said, "Jesus, where are you going? How is that possible? Are you leaving me?" He said, "I have to leave." He repeated, "When will you come back?" He said, "In 3 years." Then he began to walk away. My pain was extreme. In the midst of my tears and convulsions, I repeated to myself, "I will never see him again for 3 years. Oh my God, what am I going to do?" Ma pain atate si grande kjn per disconnaissance etjene poveus plus rien entendre. Par la suite, ayant reprise connaissance, les u a pain ouverts, je vis tu il atate revenu et tu il remontate sur mes genoux. Ilse blottet sur moi et me caressa avec ses petites mains, m'embrassa et me repita. Comme toi, car je quit pas. Pendant tu il me decesella, je sentis que je revenais à la vie. Ensuite, je réintégré mon corps. Mais avec un tel père que je me sentais mourir. Privé de monde du Jesus, je viva des jours très amours. La pensée de ne plus le revoir hantit cruellement monde cœur. Ah! Jesus, tu me plonges dans un véritable enfer. Mes pains surpassant mim celeste l'enfer. Aidant d'un que, en ayant pas en yeux la semence de l'amour, les dames t'y fuyant. Ils en aspirant pas à t'embrasser puisque leurs souffrances seraient aggravées par ta présence. Quand on hate l'amour, on ne recherche pas la présence de la personne qu'elle on hate. Ainsi, pour les dames, la privation de toi est plus tolérable. Mais, pour moi, malheureux que je suis, c'est tout le contraire. Je t'aime, je sens la semence de l'amour jusque dans mes os, mes nerfs et monde sang. Having lived together for more than 40 years. Don't you remember filling my whole being with your presence? Deprived of you, I feel like I'm drained of everything. My bones, my nerves and my blood sigh after you. In me, there is a continual groan that tortures me. My whole being wants to find the one who filled him. Don't you see the cruel heartbreaks that my poor existence is burdened with? Ah! In hell, there is no these atrocious penalties. Of these cruel heartbreaks. Of this absence of a God possessed and loved. Ah! Jesus, come back to the one who loves you, come back to the most unfortunate of the unfortunate. To the one who is unhappy only for you, only because of you. Ah! I can say it, you alone have made me unhappy, I know of no other misfortune. While I was swimming in this sad sea of deprivation, I stopped to consider the sufferings of the heart of my Jesus, in order to compare them to those of my poor heart. But instead of finding comfort in the thought of my Jesus' sufferings, my own sufferings were growing. This led me to think that my sufferings surpass those of my Jesus, since, although very great, his sufferings are inflicted on him by finite beings, while mine are by an infinite being, a God. Indeed, Jesus cannot suffer the suffering of being left by a God. Nor can he leave himself. Therefore, he cannot undergo suffering that surpasses all suffering, that of being deprived of a God. Even his pierced heart could not suffer this suffering. Moreover, however great the suffering inflicted on him by the creatures, they do not diminish its sovereignty, do not diminish it itself, and do not prevent him from remaining the eternal, immense, infinite, amiable, and adorable being that he is. As for me, I have no sovereignty or domination and, deprived of Jesus, I feel diminished, annihilated. See, then, O Jesus, how much greater my sufferings are than yours. Ah! You know the suffering that creatures cause you. But you don't know the suffering that a God can cause to his creatures. How painful the deprivation of you can be to them. What I wrote above gives a good idea of the foolish thoughts that my poor mind entertained. I thought to myself that no suffering can be compared to the suffering of being deprived of Jesus, immeasurable suffering, without beginning or end. As great as Jesus is, the suffering of his absence is great. As a result of these thoughts, my poor heart was lifeless. In order not to continue with these stupid thoughts, I tried to stop comparing my sufferings with those of Jesus and to move on. I prayed to him to give me his strength. The suffering of being deprived of Jesus has a mysterious and divine accent that other sufferings do not have, has a heavier weight than all the other sufferings put together. So I prayed to Jesus that In His goodness, He accepts my suffering and that through her, He grants me the greatest of graces. Let all know His most holy will, and that, by His mysterious and divine accent, it resonates in all hearts and calls them to live in it. By crushing with its weight the human will, passions, and sins, so that all may know and love her, and understand what it means to lose a God. But how do I manage to write everything that went through my head? That would be too long and, moreover, I would have preferred to keep everything silent. But obedience prevailed, and I had to proceed. However, I ended up feeling exhausted and unable to continue. Then my sweet Jesus arose from within. He was all exhausted and had his mouth filled with blood. The blood was so abundant that he could barely speak. With a sad look, he asked for my help. In the face of his suffering, I forgot mine. In fact, since he was with me, I was no longer suffering, and I begged him to let me suffer with him. After we had suffered for a while together, the blood disappeared from his mouth. Seeing how much his absence had affected me, he hugged me on him and stretched out into me to fill me with him. He said to me, "Poor girl, how weakened you are. In fact, the suffering of being deprived of a God is the greatest of all sufferings. Thus, the strength of my will was necessary for you to endure it. But do you know what it means to suffer in my will? Your sufferings flowed wherever my will was. On earth, in heaven, in saints and angels. All of them looked at you and helped you. And if paradise had been able to suffer, their joy and bliss would have turned into suffering. But, unable to suffer, all of them begged for graces for you. The sufferings of souls who live in my will are the cross of all. Satisfy for all, and change into heavenly dew the fury of divine justice. Therefore, take courage and never leave my will." I remained confused. I expected reproaches from Jesus as a result of my crazy thoughts, but nothing happened and we remained in perfect peace. I merged into the divine will in my usual way. I was doing my best to thank my kind Jesus for all he did in the redemption. Moving inside me, he said to me, "My daughter, taking flight in my will, join all the sacraments that I have instituted, and descend into the depths of each one in order to give me small returns of love. Oh! What secret tears you will find there! So many sighs, so many groans of the Holy Spirit. These moans are continual because of all the disillusionment that our love suffers. I instituted the sacraments in order to prolong my life on earth with my children. But, what disappointments! That's why I need your love. He may be small, but my will make him great. My love does not tolerate only one person who lives in my will, is not associated with my suffering, and does not give me small returns of love for all that I have achieved and suffered. When a newborn is baptized, I cry, because then that I find my child, that I restore his innocence, that I restore to him all his rights over creation, that I smile at him with love, that I put the enemy on the run by taking away all his rights over this child, that I entrust it to the angels, and that all heaven celebrates in his honor. My smile quickly turns into pain and the party into mourning, knowing that this child will become an enemy, a new Adam, and maybe a lost soul. Oh! How my love groans at every baptism! Especially if, moreover, the minister who baptizes the fact without the respect, dignity, and decorum due to a regenerative sacrament. How often he is more attentive to trifles than to the actual administration of the sacrament. Thus, my love feels betrayed. Not only by the one who is baptized, but also by the one who baptizes. Do you not want, therefore, at each baptism, to give me a return of love? A moan of love? Let us now turn to the sacrament of confirmation. Here too, what bitter sighs! By confirmation, I strengthen the courage of the person who receives the sacrament and I give her back her lost strength so that she may become invincible before her enemies and passions. I admit her to the militia of the Creator so that she can conquer her heavenly homeland. The Holy Spirit gives him his kiss of love, covers it with 1,000 caresses and offers to accompany him in the fights. Often, alas, he does not receive in return that the kiss of the traitor, that contempt for his caresses and his company. So many sighs, so many moans for this person to come back. So many words whispered in his heart, but in vain. Ne vertu don pas donner au Saint Esprit. An outpouring of love, a kiss of love, and keep him company. But do not stop, continue your flight, and you will hear the anguished groans of the Holy Spirit in the sacrament of penance. So much ingratitude and desecration on the part of those who administer it and of those who receive it. Through him, my blood acts on the repentant sinner by covering his soul for wash it, beautify it, heal it, strengthen it and give him back the lost graces. He gives him the keys of heaven that sin had taken away from him, and he imprints on his forehead the pacifying kiss of forgiveness. However, what moans when they see some people approaching this sacrament routinely and without contrition. Instead of finding life and graces for their souls, they find there death and encouragement to their passions. The sacrament is a joke for them. My blood, instead of being a bath for their souls, becomes a fire that makes it even more withered. At every confession, my love weeps and repeats with sighs, human ingratitude, how great you are! Everywhere you seek to offend me. As I offer you life, it is towards death that you are heading. See, then, my daughter, how much we await your outpourings of love in the sacrament of penance. Don't let your love stop there. Go to all tabernacles, to all hosts. And thou shalt hear the Holy Spirit groan with unspeakable sorrow. Through the sacrament of the Eucharist, souls receive not only their own lives, but also mine. This sacrament forms my life in them. This life is growing through the repetition of communions. These souls can say, I am another Christ. But, alas, very few benefit from this sacrament. In how many hearts I descend, I detect weapons to hurt me and to repeat my passion. And, while the species are consumed, far from feeling inspired to dwell in these hearts, I must leave hastily, weeping over the fate of my sacrament. So, give me endlessly outpourings of love for soothe my crying and lessen the groans of the Holy Spirit. Do not stop, otherwise, we would miss your outpourings of love. Descend also into the sacrament of holy orders. There you will find our most hidden sufferings, our most bitter tears, our deepest moans. Ordination elevates man to a supreme height and gives him a divine mission. Repeat my life. Administer the sacraments. Reveal my secrets. Proclaim the gospel, my most sacred science. Reconcile heaven and earth. Bring Jesus to souls. But, alas, how many priests are for us? Judas, profaners of the sacredness imprinted in them. Oh! How the Holy Spirit groans when he sees these priests desecrate the most sacred bonds established between heaven and earth. The order encloses all the sacraments. If the priest knows how to preserve in his integrity the character proper to each sacrament, he is as their guardian and as the defender of Jesus himself. If he does not, our sorrow is great, our groans are continual. Therefore, let your outpourings of love flow into all priestly acts, so as to keep company with the groans of love of the Holy Spirit. Listen now in your heart. Our deep groans about the sacrament of marriage. Marriage was elevated by me to the rank of sacrament for the purpose of to establish sacred bonds between the father, mother, and children, of love, concord and peace, similar to those that exist in the Most Holy Trinity. Thus, the earth was to be populated by earthly families reflecting the heavenly family. Their members were going to be like earthly angels called to come and populate the celestial regions. However, how many groans when seeing so many earthly families reflect hell rather than heaven. Instead of love, discord, lack of love and hatred reign in them. Thus, many earthly creatures resemble rebellious angels dedicated to hell, which greatly makes the Holy Spirit groan. Therefore, give us outpourings of love. For each wedding. For every creature that is born. Thus, our continual moans will be less painful to us. Let your outpourings of love also be on the bed of the dying to whom the anointing of the sick is administered. La ossi, que de gemessements, que de larmes secretes. Ce sacrament a la virtue. To bring the sinner to safety at the time of death. It confirms the holiness of the good he has done. It weaves a last link between the creature and its creator. She places the seal of heaven on the redeemed soul. By infusing it with the merits of the Redeemer to enrich, purify, and beautify it. She is the last brush stroke given to her by the Holy Spirit to prepare her well to leave the earth and appear before her Creator. In short, the anointing of the sick is the 12th expression of our love for the soul. It is the recognition of all his good deeds. It acts in a surprising way on those who are open to grace. By this sacrament, the soul is as if covered with a heavenly dew that extinguishes with a single breath its passions, its attachment to the earth and to all that is not of heaven. However, that moans, bitter tears, of indispositions, of negligence, of loss of souls. How few benefit from the sacrament of the sick. For the sanctification of their souls and for the ordering of all their good deeds. If people could hear our groans about the dying receiving the sacrament of the sick, they would feel great sorrow. Do you not want to give us an outpouring of love every time this sacrament is administered? Our will awaits you everywhere. To receive your outpourings of love and to have your company as a result of our groans and sighs. I wanted to merge into the holy divine will, as I usually do, to then worship my crucified God. But, as it has recently happened to me more than once. What never happened to me before? I fell asleep when I had not even realized the first thing and therefore no more worship. So, I thought to myself, I will first worship the crucifix. Then, if I am not invaded by sleep, I will merge into the divine will to perform my usual deeds. As I thought about this, my sweet Jesus came out of my interior and brought his face closer to mine. He said to me, my daughter, begin by merging you into my will and there, stand before the Supreme Majesty, bringing back to him all human wills. Then, with the help of my will, make reparation for all acts of human wills opposed to my will. Our will came to deify creatures and we want the wills of creatures in return. The most direct offense that creatures can do to their Creator is to do their own will. By rejecting that of their Creator, it comes back to reject the goods of creation and to refuse to be in the likeness of the Creator. Could it be a trivial thing? If, after merging into my will, you took it on your lap and applied its divinizing act to all creatures, and then presented to the Supreme Majesty all these acts of my will? Be aware that recognize in the name of all creatures the primordial act. What my will has accomplished for each of them. No one has ever done that. It is your duty to do so. Since you are the mandatary of a special mission with regard to my will. And if sleep surprises you while you are doing this, Heavenly Father will look at you with love, seeing that you sleep in His arms and that, even while sleeping, His little daughter holds on His lap all the acts of His will, to give Him returns of love and all the honors that belong to Him. Consequently, first fulfill your duty and then, if you can, also worship my wounds. May Jesus always be thanked. That evening, thanks to His kindness, I was able to do both. I merged into the holy divine will in my usual way. Moving within me, my sweet Jesus hugged me. In the tone of a person who wants to give a teaching, He tells me, my daughter, you should know that When a person is in charge of a mission, the more assets it owns related to this mission, the more she can communicate to others. These communicated goods will become like a seed for the people who will have the chance to receive them, which will own the ensuing harvest. This is what happened to Adam, who, as the first man, was at the head of all generations. As such, he had to possess all the seeds necessary for the development of human life. It can be said that everything comes from him. He possessed all the sciences, things which his descendants would come to know after much effort. He knew them all in an infused way. He had science. All plants, of all herbs with their particular virtues, the science of all species of animals and how to put them to good use, the science of the arts of music, singing, writing and medicine. In short, the science of everything. If the generations mastered some particular sciences, Adam mastered them all. So see how much a person who is at the head of a mission must master everything he will have to communicate to others. And that's your case, my daughter. Since I have placed you at the head of a special mission, which is more than Adam's. This is not a human science, but of the science of science, that of my will, a heavenly science. I want you to possess all the seeds that my will entails. The more you act in my will, the more knowledge you gain about it, the more rays you add to its sun. Thus, in a great light, my will spread for the good of generations, that souls may know more clearly the goods it contains, and the great advantages they will have to live in it. It will be like the natural sun which, because it has a great overabundance of light, can easily take all the earth under his tutelage, warm it, illuminate it and fertilize it, so that all, some more, some less, can enjoy its benefits. If the sun were poor in light, it would not be able to illuminate the whole earth. At best, he would reach some parts of it gravitating closer to him. If, for the sake of generations, I have given the natural sun an overabundant light, I want to do much more this for the sun of my will so that it can strongly illuminate souls, reheat them and to bring them the fruitful seed of divine holiness. Just like I chose Adam to be at the head of the human generations, and that I have chosen in the sky a point where to fix the sun that illuminates the earth, I have chosen you to be at the center of the sun of my will. This sun must possess a quantity of light, such that all can be enlightened and appropriate it. That is why your actions in my will are so necessary, as well as all the knowledge I give you. This is the usual way of doing eternal wisdom, that to involve the actions of creatures, in order to complete the good I want to fill them. This was the case with regard to the redemption of mankind. A period of 4,000 years was necessary, so that the preparatory acts that the creatures had to perform were performed. The patriarchs, the prophets, and all the good that was done in the Old Testament were called upon to pave the way for the fulfillment of the redemption. However, more was needed. As good and holy as these acts were, the very high wall of original sin always maintained the divide between creatures and God. The coming of a virgin was necessary. A virgin conceived without the original, innocent, holy fault, enriched by God with all graces, and who knew how to make his own all the holy acts carried out during the 4,000 years. She covered these acts, his innocence, holiness, and purity, so that the divinity may live them as through those of this innocent and holy creature who not only embraced all the acts of the elders, but surpassed them all. This is how she obtained the long-awaited descent into the land of the Word. What happened to the acts performed by the righteous of the Old Testament can be compared. A person's situation, which has a lot of gold and silver coins, but without the effigy of the king being printed on it. Although in themselves these coins have value, they cannot be considered as valid currency in the kingdom. If, however, the king acquires these coins and prints his effigy on them, they turn into legal tender. This is how the Virgin did. She printed on the acts of the Old Testament his innocence, his holiness and the divine will that was in his possession. She presented these transformed acts to the Godhead. She thus obtained that the Redeemer descended to the earth. However, so that these acts may have the value of money to allow entry into heaven. Not only the seal of holiness, innocence, and divine will was to be affixed to it, but also the seal of the operation of the Word itself. The acts of the Virgin were enough to bring me down among the creatures. My divine operation was necessary to allow the creatures to ascend to heaven. This is how I have made my own all the holy acts performed by creatures. From the first to have come to earth to the half to come there, and I have placed on them my seal, which is made up of my unheard of suffering and my shed blood. Thus, like a magnanimous king, I have made available to all the currency allowing to enter heaven. All this has been decreed by uncreated wisdom and was necessary for the redemption to be brought to its completion. My daughter, it must be for my will what it was for the redemption, so that my will be known by creatures and may become their principle of life. It is necessary that the acts be improved. Following the example of my Heavenly Mother and myself, you must embrace in my will all acts performed in the Old Testament, those performed by the Queen of Heaven and those accomplished by myself, as well as those that have been or will be realized by the good and holy persons, until the end of time. On all these acts, you will put your seal of love, of blessings and of adoration, enhanced by the holiness and power of my will. Nothing should escape you. My will embraces everything, you must embrace everything too. I felt totally immersed in the immense sea of the divine will. I would have liked, as my kind Jesus told me, not to let anything slip from all his past, present and future acts, which are for him a simple act, and always remain in this divine will. To constantly lavish on him acts of love and thanksgiving. At the very least, I would have liked to draw up a long list of his actions, to stimulate me to admiration and praise, and to help me always maintain myself in her. But, because of my smallness, I didn't know where to start, given that it is everywhere and is always doing surprising acts, both in big things and in small things. While I was thinking about this, my sweet Jesus came out of my interior. He said to me, "Daughter of my holy will, when you are a child, you have to know what his father does and everything he owns, and be able to tell him, what is yours is mine. If this is not the case, it means that there are not many agreements between father and daughter, or, perhaps, that she is not his legitimate daughter. If you are a true daughter of my will, you must know all that my will does and all the property it owns. To live in my will is to keep company with all one's actions. My will does not want to be isolated in creation, but wants to be always in the company of creatures. She loves creatures so much that, for them, it maintains order everywhere in creation and is brought to life for each of the things created. When she finds a soul that keeps her company in her actions within creation, it overflows with joy and she sees in this soul a creature she loves and by which she is loved, a creature to whom to make her secrets known, which she prints in luminous characters in her soul. How beautiful my will is when it coexists with the smallness of the human will. In his act of keeping company with his own, my will always wants to give. She finds smallness beautiful, rich, and powerful. She wants to keep her always with her so that she can give it to her all the time. There is nothing more beautiful, graceful, and surprising than to see a soul who keeps company with the acts of the will of his Creator. Between this soul and the Creator, there is a rivalry, a reciprocal love, a continual movement of giving and receiving. Oh! If you knew how rich you are! As much as you know things about my will, as much as you own property, and if you try to count these goods, you can't do it and you drown in them. Be attentive to the acts of my will if you always want to keep them company. I merged into the holy divine will in my usual way. I tried to bring all the created things on my lap and to place on each one I love you, one I thank you, one I adore you, and one I bless you, in such a way as to keep company with the divine will which, with so much love, is found everywhere in creation. While I was doing this, a thought came to me. What does the soul that lives in the divine will receive? Coming out of my interior, my adorable Jesus squeezed me tightly on him and he said to me, "My daughter, do you want to know what the soul that lives in my will receives? She receives that my will unites with hers by granting her equality between our two wills. My will, being holy, pure and light, wants this soul to become equal to him in holiness, purity, and light. And because his desire is to live in my will, my desire is to give his will a perfect resemblance to mine. It is for this reason that I want you with my will wherever it operates so that it can constantly make you benefit from its actions." Hearing this, I said to Jesus, "My love, your will is everywhere and, thus, all live in it. Yet not all of them have this resemblance." Jesus immediately resumed, "It is true that all live in my will, since it is everywhere. But most live there as foreigners or mercenaries, or by necessity, or like rebels. They live in my will, without knowing it and without knowing its riches. They are usurpers of the life they have received from her." Each of their actions highlights the dissimilarity between their will and that of their Creator, and also their poverty, their passions, and the thick darkness in which they are plunged. They are blind to everything that looks at heaven. To achieve equality with my will, the soul must not live there as a foreigner, but as the owner. It must see all things as belonging to him in his own right and take care of it. However, it is necessary that she knows these things well if she wants to be in good condition to love them and to be the owner. As beautiful and good as a thing is, if it does not belong to us totally, one cannot truly love it and give it all the attention it deserves. We look at it with indifference and without attaching ourselves to it. On the other hand, if the thing becomes our property, we look at it carefully. We love it and we go so far as to make an idol of him. This is not the case because the thing has changed or has become more beautiful, but because it is the person who has changed as a result of the acquisition of this thing as his exclusive property. This is what happens to the soul that lives in my will. She perceives my will as her own. She feels her heavenly aura. It perceives its likeness to the one who created it. She feels invested with the reflections of the Creator. In all things, it feels the power of the Fiat Creator. In the sea of goods she owns, she says, "How happy I am, God's will belongs to me and I love it. The acts performed in my will are spreading everywhere. At daybreak, you said to me, 'Let my spirit awaken in your divine will and cover with your will all the intelligences of creatures so that they may awaken in your will.' On behalf of all, I present to you their adoration, love, and submission. Then a heavenly dew from my will has spread over all creatures, brought to each one the grace obtained by your act. How beautiful it was to see them all covered with this dew, of which the morning dew is the symbol, which, every morning, covers the plants, beautifies them, fertilizes them and prevents drying out those that are about to wither. As delightful as the morning dew is, the dew resulting from the acts performed in my will is much more so." I said to Jesus, "Yet my love and my life, despite this dew, creatures do not change." He said, "If the morning dew is so beneficial unless it falls on dry wood or on something that has no life, the dew of my will is even more beneficial. Unless the souls who receive it have not died completely to grace, in which case, however, by its life-giving virtue, it tries to infuse them with a little life. But all the other souls, some plus, some minus, according to their provisions, feel the effects of this beneficial dew. I was doing my usual deeds in the divine will, embracing all creation and by making all the acts of creatures my own. With my weak love, I gave thanks to my God for all that He has achieved in creation. A thought came to my mind. You take a long time to pray in this way. But what good do you really do and what glory do you give to your God? Then, moving in me, my sweet Jesus stretched out His arm, embraced all things and creatures, and then, raising them, He offered them to His Father. Then He said to me, "My daughter, a person who truly lives in my will has in the depths of his soul all creatures and all things. Indeed, by his life in my will, it possesses all that my will has done and will do, and she loves as I love. Therefore, I find in it the starry skies, the dazzling sun, the vast seas, the flowering meadows, etc. And it is right that, circulating within all these things, she places on each one a kiss and stamps on it an I love you to the one who created them with so much love and in such great overabundance. And as the true life in my will embraces all, there is, in this person, the holy Adam in the state in which he came out of my creative hands, and the guilty Adam, humiliated and in tears. Thus, the person who lives in my will is related to Adam in his state of holiness and joining in his innocent and holy acts. It can give me glory and make all of creation smile again. Moreover, sharing his tears, it can grieve with him for this rejected Fiat that has led to so many ruins. In the person who lives in my will are also found the prophets, the patriarchs and the holy fathers with all their deeds. They who sighed so much after the coming of the Redeemer. In my will, this person can associate himself with their sighs. There is also in her my inseparable mother and my own person, with all their actions, from which so many wonders have flowed. In short, I want her to participate in all my things, past, present, and future. It is right and necessary that all these things be inseparable from her. If I do not find them in her, it is that it does not live totally in my will and that she cannot give me returns of love for everything that belongs to me. Didn't I create her to be a little world and a little God? That's why I keep repeating to you that life in my will is not yet known. I teach you so many things, and I enlarge your capacities so that all my possessions may enter into you. I want love returns for everything that comes from me. I can only tolerate a person who lives in my will, do not know all my things, does not like them and does not own them. Otherwise, how could one speak of the great prodigy of life in my will? Then my sweet Jesus became silent. I began to wander in the divine will. Oh! As I would have liked. Put a kiss of love and gratitude on all things created and print an I love you on all acts of His will, so that I can seize it and make it a crown for Jesus in me. Then I saw the starry sky and my kind Jesus said to me, "My daughter, look at the sky. What order! What harmony! No star can be without the other. One supports the other. One is the strength of the other. If that never happens, a single star left its place, it would occur such confusion, such a mess, that there would be a danger that everything would fall apart. Thus, the great beauty of the sky rests on the fact that, through the communicative and attractive force that the stars have in common, each keeps its place, and all of them, more than electricity, remain pending and linked together, like the sky above the earth. Human creatures also form a sky made up of animated stars. Had it not been for the original fault, all the things that Adam and all those that his descendants were going to make would have been pooled by all humans. Everyone would have had in his possession not only his personal strength, but also that of others. Tous les biens auraient été en commun. Like what electricity does, my will would have held all humans together and would have provided them with all that is good and holy. while having my will as the point of origin and by having their own activity, everyone would have been converted to light and thus would have been light for others. So understand my pain. To see the sky of creatures in such a mess. This pain is so great that it cannot be understood by the human mind. When my will, which was to harmonize everything in creatures, was rejected, it was disorder, confusion, disunity, weakness, darkness. The poor sky of the creatures turned upside down. Only life in my will restore order and will shine a new light. That is why I want to find in you all things and all creatures. My will, the first act of all celestial and earthly creatures, will communicate to you all their actions. You will become connected to them and they to you. Be very attentive, because I want to give you the greatest thing possible. But I want great things and the highest attention from you. Who gives a lot expects a lot. I thought of the tears that baby Jesus shed at birth and I thought to myself, how bitter those tears must have been, how they must have been either freeze, or burn that tender face. In fact, from what I know, tears have two possible effects. If they are caused by love, they are burning and cause sobs. If they are caused by grief, they are cold and cause chills. In my royal little baby, there was infinite love and boundless sorrow. So his crying must have been very painful for him. As I entertained this thought, my sweet Jesus moved in me and showed me his face all bathed in tears. Her tears flowed profusely, to the point of wetting his chest and hands. He sighed and said to me, "My daughter, my tears began from my conception in the womb of my heavenly mother and continued until my last breath on the cross. Heavenly Fathers will charged me with the duty of tears. From my eyes, as many tears as from the eyes of all creatures together must have flowed. Just as I had conceived all their souls, I had to shed all their tears. So you can understand how much I had to cry. Because of their passions, so that these passions may be extinguished. Ilsont vers les larmes qui sont nécessaires après le péché pour insuffler en elles. Le regret de m'avoir offense. La conviction chuels ont mal agi, et. The will not to sin any more. They shed tears to encourage them to sympathize with the sufferings of my passion. They shed abundant tears of love to stimulate them to love me. What I just told you is enough for you to understand. That there is no tear shed by creatures, which I did not pay myself. No one was aware of all those secret tears shed from my eyes. How many times, even when I was a child, I flew from earth to heaven, where I put my little head on the lap of my heavenly Father and said to him, sobbing, "My Father, you see, I went to earth to cry and suffer like my brothers who are born, live and the crying. I love them so much that I want all their tears to go through my eyes. I don't want to let any of them escape me. In order to turn them all into tears of love, penalty, victory, sanctification and of divinization." How many times my dear mother has had her heart pierced when she saw me cry like this. She would join her tears with mine and we would cry together. Sometimes I was forced to hide to give free rein to my tears, thus avoiding piercing her maternal and innocent heart. Sometimes I waited for my heavenly mother to be busy with domestic work to give free rein to my tears. Following Jesus' words, I said to him, "So then, my love, your eyes have poured out my personal tears, and also those of our first father Adam. I want you to shed these tears on my soul, in order to give me grace. Not only to fulfill your most holy will, but to possess it as my own will." Then he nodded. Tears flowed from his face on my poor soul. He added, "Daughter of my will, I have indeed shed your tears, that through them I may give you the great gift of my will. What Adam could not receive by his tears, even if they passed through my eyes, you can." Before he sinned, Adam possessed my will, and as such, he grew magnificently in the likeness of his Creator. So much so that everyone in heaven was delighted and felt honored to serve him. By his sin, he lost possession of my will. Although it wept his fault very much, no more sinned, and could still accomplish my will. He could no longer possess it. For the graft that connected him to God was broken. This graft was redone by me, the eternal Word, after 4,000 years. By this time, Adam had already crossed the threshold of sanctity. However, in spite of this divine graft redone in the midst of so much tears, groans and suffering, how many are content with Adam's situation after his fall? Just do my will? Others do not want to hear my will speak or, worse, rebel against her. Only those who choose to live in my will, reach the state of innocence of Adam before his fall. There is a very large gap between those who do my will and those who possess it, the same only between Adam's situation before his fall and his situation after his fall. When I came to earth, I acted as a god by doing what was necessary for man to recover his original situation, that is, to possess my will. Although, currently, most take advantage of my coming only as a remedy for their salvation. Appeal to my will only as a means not to go to hell. I continue to wait for souls. Rise higher and accept my will as life. In making this will known, I wait that souls choose to take possession of it. That the divine graft that I have redone bears fruit. Thus, my tears will turn into heavenly and divine smiles. For me and for them. I was thinking about what is said above. That the divine will is a gift and that, as a gift, one possesses it as one's own good, and that he who is content to do the will of God must submit to orders and ask very often what to do. If he wants to perform an action that God wants, he must borrow the gift and hand it over once the action is over. As I thought about this, it occurred to me various comparisons illustrating the difference between the two situations. Here are two of them. Suppose I received as a gift a gold coin that has the virtue of producing money as much as I want. Oh, that I could get rich with this gold coin. Suppose now that another person has received a similar piece, but only for an hour, or in order to do some work, and that he will have to return the piece afterwards. What a difference between these two situations. Suppose again that I received as a gift a light that never goes out. So, day and night, I am safe and I always have this light. It's like it's part of my nature. It gives me the advantage of always knowing what is good to accomplish it and which is wrong to avoid it. So, with this light, I make fun of everything. Of the world, of the devil, of my passions and also of myself. This light is for me a perpetual source of happiness. She has no weapon, but she defends me. She has no voice, but she instructs me. She has no hands and no feet, but she is for me a safe guide to lead me to heaven. Now suppose that another person received the same light, but that it does not have it continuously and that she must ask for it when she thinks she needs it. Even if it means putting it back then. As she is not used to seeing things with this light. She does not possess knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, and it does not have enough strength to do good and avoid evil. Not continually having this light at his disposal. How many disappointments, dangers, and narrow passages does it face? While my mind imagined examples of this kind, I thought to myself, to live in the divine will is to possess it and, therefore, it is a gift. But if God is not willing to give this gift to a creature, what can that poor creature do? Then my kind Jesus moved in me, and, pressing me him, said to me, "My daughter, it is true that living in my will is a gift and that it is the greatest gift. But this gift, which has an infinite value, which is a currency that increases in value at every moment, which is a light that never weakens, which is a sun that never sets and which restores to the person his place of honor and sovereignty in creation, is granted only to those which are well disposed, which will not waste it, and who are ready to sacrifice their own lives so that this gift may have total supremacy in them. To make this gift to a creature, I make sure first that she really desires to do my will and not hers, that it is ready to sacrifice everything to achieve this goal, and that, with every action she takes, she demands the gift of my will, even in the form of a loan. When I see that she has become accustomed to doing everything with the loan of my will, I give it to her because, by constantly asking for it, she has formed in her the emptiness where I can deposit the heavenly gift. Having become accustomed to living with the divine nourishment of my will in the form of a loan, she has lost the taste of her own will. His palate has become ennobled and can no longer adapt to the vile food of his own will. Then, seeing herself in possession of this gift that she has so desired, she lives from it and gives him all her love. Now suppose that a man who loves a young child very much gives him $1,000 bill, so that he may come to keep her company for some time. But that, not knowing the value of the note, the child tears it into 1,000 pieces. Wouldn't you blame the man for doing this? Suppose, on the other hand, that before giving the ticket to the child, the man makes sure that he desires it by explaining to him all the good that he will be able to draw from it, and that, subsequently, instead of tearing up the ticket, the child appreciates it very much, places it in safety and loves the donor more. In the latter case, are you not instead going to praise the man for having done so? If men are able to do things well among themselves, how much more I know how to give the gift of my will, with wisdom, justice, and love. However, it is necessary that the person is well disposed, is familiar with the gift offered, and really esteems him. Knowledge is for her the first step to take. This knowledge paves the way and is like the contract that will have to be signed to obtain the gift. The more knowledge the soul acquires about my will, the more she desires it and more she urges the divine giver to affix her signature on the contract that will give it to her. One sign that I currently want to bestow the gift of my will to creatures is that I very much desire for his knowledge to spread everywhere. Therefore, if you want me to put my signature, that the gift of my will may be for all creatures, be careful so that nothing escapes you from what I teach you. Then my poor spirit began to wander in the divine will as I strove to do all my deeds in it. Then I felt invested with a supreme light, and the small acts I was doing entered that light and became light themselves. However, I couldn't know where they stood in that light. I only knew they were there. As for me, it was impossible for me to navigate in this light. I could get in, of course, but crossing it completely was not within the reach of my smallness. My kind Jesus moved in me and said to me, "My daughter, how beautiful it is to see a soul act in my will. By acting in the light of my will, it unites with the unique act of its creator and it takes its rightful place in this light. She cannot see her actions in it, although it is certain that they have their place in the past, present, and future. The sun, the image of divine light, has part of this property. Suppose you are in a place lit by the sun, you see its light in front of you, above you, behind you, to your right and to your left. However, you can't know what part of this light surrounds you, but you know that it surrounds you. If, in the same way that they are converted into divine light, your acts could be converted into sunlight, do you think you could know where the portions of light associated with your actions are? Certainly not. However, you would know that they come from you and have been incorporated into this light. This is why life in the divine will is the greatest thing that can happen to you. Through it you live divinely. As soon as the Creator sees a soul in His will, He takes her in His arms. He puts her on His lap and He lets it operate with His own hands and with the power of Fiat by which all things were made. This is how the acts of the creature become light, unite with the unique act of the Creator, and Sing his glory and praises. So be ensured that the most important thing for you is to live in my will, and that in this way you will never leave the knees of your Creator. I was totally merged into the divine will, and my weak mind was flowing through it. I could see it in action everywhere in creation. Oh, that I would have liked accompany him continuously, and for every act she did, offer her my little returns of love, my thanks, my deep adoration and humble company. My kind Jesus moved in me and said to me, "My daughter, my will continually acts in the midst of things created for the benefit of creatures. But who brings to its completion what my will accomplishes there? Who puts the end point in it? The creature, or rather, the creature who considers all created things as coming from my will. Consider wheat. After giving to his seed the virtue of germinating and multiplying, my will sees that it be buried, that the sun makes it fertile, that the wind purifies it, that freshness helps it to take root, and that the heat helps it to develop and reach maturity. Then my will gives the machines ownership to cut the harvest, to beat it and grind it, so that it turns into bread-making dough. Finally, my will calls on fire to bake this dough so that it becomes bread, which she brings to the mouth of creatures so that they can feed on them. So you can see the long journey that my will takes the wheat seed to become bread for the benefit of creatures. However, who is putting an end to this divine intervention? He who takes the bread as the bearer of my will and feeds on it. By eating this bread, he eats my will that is there, thus strengthening his body and his soul. It can be said that the creature is the artisan, the rest of my will, as a result of his interventions with creatures. This is the case for all things created in the service of man. My will intervenes in the sea and watches over the proliferation of fish. It intervenes on the earth and multiplies plants, animals, and birds. It unfolds in celestial spaces and ensures that everything works harmoniously there. It has made the feet, hands, and heart of creatures so that its innumerable benefits are beneficial to them. But his joy comes only from creatures who consider all these things to be fruits of my will. If my will did not watch over ceaselessly that the things created serve men well, thus fulfilling the purpose for which they were created, these would be like paintings depicting things that have no life. At the end of the day, it is not the created things that serve man, but it is my will through them. Consequently, perceive my will in the things created and serve it in the same way as it serves men. Is it not one of man's most sacred duties? When man does this, I feel paid back and I party. It happens to my will what happens to an actor who wants to give a show. Poor man! What a hard job for the preparation of the show. Even with regard to gestures, so that the public is brought sometimes to laugh, sometimes to cry. He sweats and gets very tired. When everything is ready, he invites the audience and the more people he sees introducing themselves, the more joy rises in his heart. Because the show could well be a great success. This will be the case if, after the performance, his hands fill with gold and silver coins in confirmation of the audience's appreciation. On the other hand, if, after having prepared so much and having given all the necessary publicity, no one shows up, or only a few people who leave after the first act. Poor man, what suffering, how his anticipated feast turns into mourning. What overwhelms this man so much, he who is nevertheless a seasoned artist? The ungrateful audience who shunned his show. This is the situation of my will which, in the great theatre of creation, mounts the most beautiful scenes for the joy of men. Not for the purpose of receiving, but for the purpose of giving. Scenes resplendent with light. Flowery scenes of brilliant beauty. Scenes of strength by the rumble of thunder. The continuous course of the waves and the altitude of the high mountains. Moving scenes like the one. The baby who cries, trembles and is numb from the cold. The sad and tragic scenes of my spilled blood and my passion. and the scene of my death. No actor, no matter how talented, can match me in the editing of beautiful scenes all imbued with love. But, alas, how many people do not perceive my will behind all these scenes and do not know how to enjoy the fruits that flow from it. Thus, they change in mourning the feast that my will had planned at the time of creation and redemption. Therefore, my daughter, let nothing escape you. Consider all created things as gifts of my will. Whether small or large, natural or supernatural, bitter or sweet. Let them all appear to you as gifts of my will. I felt totally abandoned by heaven and earth. And I remembered that Jesus once told me that I was going to live the harsh exile of life as if there was no one but him and me. All the others would disappear from my mind and heart. And now that all of them have indeed disappeared and that I live only with Jesus alone, now he has left me too. Oh! My God, what bitterness, what torture! Have mercy on me. Come back to the one who needs your life more than her own life. While I entertained this thought and others just as depressing, which it would be too long to describe here, my sweet Jesus moved inside me and said to me with a sigh, "Daughter of my will, courage. Your isolation serves as companionship for the isolation of my will in the midst of creatures, which is much more painful than yours. My will is the mother of all human wills. It placed itself at the center of creation for liberate human wills and keep them with her. Put them on his lap. Feed them with the milk of his teachings and make them grow in its likeness by putting all creation to them. Disposition. Being at the center of each of the things created. My will is with creatures wherever they are. More than a loving mother, she makes sure they never lack maternal care and lose neither their nobility nor their likeness to God. But, alas! Human wills take no account of maternal love and care. May my will lavish on them. They stay away from her. Many do not even know her. Others despise it or don't care. Poor mother abandoned by her children. While they take their lives from her, they use that life to offend her. Can a mother experience greater suffering than that? To be abandoned by one's own children. To be unknown to those to whom it gave birth? Thus, the suffering of the isolation that my will undergoes is extreme. May your isolation accompany the isolation of this mother who sighs after her children while, despite her tears, his tender calls, his fiery sighs, or even the angry accents of her punishments, they stand away from her. You, the beloved daughter of my will. Do you not want to share the painful suffering that my will thus undergoes? Then I began to worship my crucified God. Meanwhile, I saw in my mind an uninterrupted column of heavily armed soldiers. I would have liked to think only of my crucified Jesus and no longer see these soldiers, but, despite myself, I still saw them. He prayed to my sweet Jesus to free me from this sight. Saddened, he said to me, "My daughter, although it praises peace, the world is preparing for war and although he advocates good understanding with the Church, he prepares the fight against her." The same thing happened to me. The people cheered me as king and carried me in triumph as I returned to Jerusalem, but they crucified me soon after. Things that are not based on the truth cannot last long. For, when there is no truth, there is no love. Without the presence of love, life withers. Therefore, what the world holds hidden will manifest. Peace will turn into war. So many unexpected things will happen. Then Jesus disappeared and I remained very distressed. The following thought rose in me. My beloved Jesus told me very often that I was his little newborn in the divine will. As my life in his will begins and I have the greatest need for him for my growth, he leaves me alone. Thus, I will be like an abortionist in the divine will. Do you not see, my love, in what pitiful state I find myself? How much do your designs for me not all do? Oh! If you don't want to have mercy on me, at least have mercy of yourself, of your designs on me and of the work you have done in my poor soul. As my poor mind sought to sink even deeper into these pessimistic thoughts, my beloved Jesus came out of my interior. He looked at me from head to toe. He said to me, "My daughter, in my will, there is neither death nor abortion. The person who lives in my will has as life my will. Even if she feels dying or dead, she is still in my will. This makes her resurrected at every moment. To a new life. To a new beauty. To a new happiness. My will keeps it. Small although large. Small although strong. Small although beautiful. My will always keeps her newborn so that it has nothing human, but that everything in her be divine. Thus, his life is my will only. She realizes all my designs by not letting any of them escape. You will be like the drop of water in the ocean or the grain of wheat in a pile of wheat. Even if the drop of water or the grain of wheat seems annihilated, no one can take away their existence. Consequently, have no fear. Do not hesitate to lose your life to have only my will as life." As I reflected on the holy divine will, the following question came to mind. How is it that after breaking with the divine will, Adam no longer made the delights of God as before? Then my kind Jesus moved in me, and in a ray of light he said to me, "My daughter, before he withdrew from my will, Adam was my son and his whole life and all his actions were centered on my will. He thus possessed a strength, a domination, and an attraction all divine. His breathing, his heartbeat, and even his simplest deeds exuded the divine. His whole being exuded a wonderful celestial fragrance. We had fun with him, we never ceased to fill him with benefits, because everything he did emanated from a single point, our will. We loved everything about him, we did not find anything unpleasant in him. By his sin, he lost his status as a son and passed to that of a servant. The divine strength, domination, attraction, and fragrance he possessed disappeared. His actions no longer reflected the divine as before. We now kept our distance from us and us from him. Although he continued to act as before, his actions no longer told us anything. Do you know what it is for us? The acts of creatures done outside the fullness of our will? They are like those foods without substance and without seasoning that, instead of causing the enjoyment of the palate, cause disgust. They are like unripe fruits without sweetness and taste. They are like flowers without perfume. They are like full vases, but full of faded, fragile and damaged things. These things can meet the strict necessities of the creature, but without giving it perfect happiness. They can give some glory to God, but not the fullness of glory. With what pleasure do we not taste well-prepared food? How it stimulates the whole person! The simple smell of his condiment whets the appetite. For his part, Adam, before he sinned, seasoned all his deeds with the condiment of our will, which whetted the appetite for our love and made us consider all his acts as tasty food. In return, we offered him the delicious food of our will. As a result of his sin, he lost his means of direct communication with his Creator. Pure love no longer reigned in him and his love for his Creator was mixed with fear. As he no longer had in his possession the divine will, his actions no longer had the same value. All of creation, including man, no longer had this supreme will as a direct source of life. In reality, after Adam's fault, the things created have remained intact. None has lost anything of its origin. Only man has degraded. He has lost his original nobility and resemblance to his Creator. However, my will did not abandon him completely. Although she was no longer able to support him as before, since he had detached himself from her, she still offered herself as a remedy so that he would not perish completely. My will is remedy, balance, preservation, nourishment, life and fullness of holiness. No matter how man wants my will to come to him, it comes like this. If he wants it as a remedy, it comes to eliminate the fever of his passions, the weakness of his impatience, the vertigo of his pride, the disease of his attachments, and so on. If he wants it as food, it presents itself to revive its strengths and help him grow in holiness. If he wants it as a means of attaining the fullness of holiness, then my will celebrates, for it sees that it wants to return to its origin. So she offers herself to give him back his likeness to his Creator, the sole purpose for which it was created. My will never leaves man. If she left him, he would evaporate into nothingness. If he does not seek to become holy by my will still takes the means so that he is at least saved. Hearing this, I said to myself, Jesus, my love, if you care so much about this, that your will operates in the creature, as at the moment when you created it, why didn't you realize this when you came to earth to redeem us? Then, coming out of my interior, Jesus hugged me tightly on his heart with inexpressible tenderness. He said to me, my daughter, the main reason why I have come to earth is precisely that man reintegrates the bosom of my will as it was at the beginning. But, to achieve this, I had to first, by means of my humanity, form the roots, trunk, branches, leaves and flowers of the tree from which the heavenly fruit of my will was to come. You can't get the fruit without the tree. This tree has been watered by my blood, cultivated by my sufferings, my groans and my tears, and illuminated by the sun my will. The fruit of my will certainly come. But, first we must desire it, know how valuable it is and know its benefits. That is why I have spoken to you so much about my will. In fact, his knowledge will lead to the desire to try it. Et quand les creatures auront gout à ses bienfaits, plusieurs d'entre elles, sinon toutes, se tourneront vers elle. Il aura plus de conflit entre la volonté humaine et la volonté du Créateur. De plus, faisant suite auxiliary nombreux fruits que ma redemption a déjà produits sur la terre, viendra le fruit que ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. So be the first to take this fruit, and desires no other food or life than my will. Here I am very saddened because of the almost sudden death of my confessor. Thus, to my inner sufferings caused by my frequent deprivations of my sweet Jesus is added this new and painful suffering for my heart, the loss of the only person who knows my poor soul thoroughly. But, may thy will be done always be realized. The earth was unworthy of possessing such a man to chastise it, the Lord took him with him. In this great bitterness of finding myself without a confessor, and not knowing where to turn, I prayed to my kind Jesus for this blessed soul, saying, my love, if you have taken it away from me, at least bring it directly to heaven with you. Crying, I added, I place it in your will that which contains all things, love, light, beauty, and all the good that has been and will be accomplished. May it purify him, embellish him, enrich him with all that is necessary for him to appear directly in your presence. As I prayed, I saw inside a globe of light the soul of my confessor heading towards the vault of heaven. He did not say a single word to me. I was consoled, of course, at the sight of the fate of my confessor. But at the same time I was very distressed because of my own fate. I prayed to Jesus that, in his goodness, by the fact that he had taken with him my confessor and that I no longer had anyone to turn to, he frees me from having to regularly embarrass my confessor and grant me this grace. Not because I want it, but because he is the one who wants it. For if Jesus granted me this grace because I am the one who wants it, I would feel as if there were a disappearance from the earth under my feet, from the sky above my head, or the beating of my heart, and, thus, it would be a disgrace rather than a grace for me. Then, totally abandoned to my suffering, I offered everything to Jesus, that he may give me the grace to always fulfill his most holy will. Full of compassion for my suffering, Jesus held me tightly on himself and said to me, my daughter, courage, do not be afraid, I do not leave you, I will always be with you. And I promise you that if no priest do not want to make themselves available to you, not desiring to follow my will, I will free you from this annoyance. Not because you will want it, but because I am the one who will want it. So don't be afraid, because I won't let your will come into play in this matter. I will do everything myself. I will watch jealously. Not to let your will intervene in anything. Not even when it comes to your breathing. It will only be my will that will intervene. When night came, I suddenly felt such fear that the beloved Jesus takes me by surprise and plunges me into my usual sufferings, that I began to tremble and scream, so much so that I felt like I wanted him to set me free. Then the sweet Jesus came out of my interior and put his face against mine. He cried so much that I felt my own face all bathed in tears. Sobbing, he said to me, "My daughter, be patient. Remember that the destiny of the world weighs on your shoulders. Ah! You don't know what it's like to be in this state of suffering with me, even for half an hour or 5 minutes. It is my real life that is repeated on earth. It is this divine life that suffer, pray, make reparation in you. And who deposits my will in you, so as to that it operates in you, as she did in my humanity. Do you think this is not much?" Then he continued to cry silently. I was heartbroken when I saw him cry like this. I understood that he was crying for me in order to give me grace. That his will have its full rights over me. That she fully maintains her life in my soul. That my will never be life. His tears were meant to bring his will to safety in my poor soul. They also wept for the priests, in order to that they have the grace to understand his works and that they be willing to fulfill his will. I merged into the divine will as usual. Making my own, the eternal I love you of my sweet Jesus, I circulated in creation, printing everywhere this I love you. So that all the things created vibrate to the same chorus. I love you, I love you, I love you to the Creator. While I was doing this, my kind Jesus came out of my interior and, squeezing me on his heart, he said to me tenderly, "My daughter, how beautiful are these I love you addressed to the Creator. By a person who lives in my will. By these I love you, I receive a return of love. From all created things. For everything I've done. And since to love means to possess what is loved. You possess all creation. Since it is mine and may I let you love it. Your I love you printed everywhere constitute your seal of possession. Feeling loved, things created recognize the person who loves them. They party and give themselves to her. Reigning in this person, my will confirms this gift. When two people own the same object, a perfect agreement must reign between them on how to dispose of the object. Oh! As my reigning will in this person elevates him above from all, loving all things created with the love of God, she becomes the owner and queen of all creation. My daughter. It is in this happy state that man was created. My will wanted him to have everything to be in the likeness of his Creator. And I want you to be in that state. Therefore, I do not want to no division between you and me. Nor that what is mine is not yours. That's why I want you to know everything that is mine. And like you love all things and you make flow on each one your I love you, all creation recognizes you. She feels in you the echo of the beginnings of humanity and in her joy, she wants to be possessed by you. I behave towards you like a king who is despised and offended by his subjects who no longer want to submit to his laws. If they observe certain laws, it is by force and not by love. Thus, the poor king is forced to live retired to his palace, deprived of the love of his subjects and their submission to his will. However, one of his subjects is an exception. It is totally loyal to the king, totally subject to his will. He weeps and repairs for the rebellious wills of his fellow citizens and he does everything to ensure that the king finds in him everything he should find in his other subjects. The king is inclined to love this person. He observes it to see if it is constant in order to be sure that what he plans to do will have a future. Indeed, sacrifice and do good. For a day is easy, but to do it throughout his life is much more difficult. If this happens, it is because the person is inhabited by a divine virtue. Quand leroiest sur de cette personne. Il la fait venir dans son palais et lui donne tout ce qu'il aurait voulu pouvoir donner à tous ses sujets. En ignorant les autres, il fait naître d'elle une nouvelle génération, dont les membres n'auront d'autre ambition que de vivre de sa volonté. De lui être totalement soumise comme des enfants nés de son sein. Ma fille, ne trouves tu pas que c'est ce que je suis en train de faire avec toi? Mes continuelles invitations à vivre dans ma volonté. Pour que non pas ta volonté, mais la men vive en toi, et monde ardent désir de voir couleur partout dans la création. Tes jetma. Tes actes d'adoration et tes actes de réparation. A l'endroit du Créateur au nom de tous les hommes, du premier qui est venu sur la terre au dernier à y venir, en indiquant-ils pas clairement. Que je vertout de toi pour pouvoir tout te donner, et que, t'élevant au-dessus de tout. Je ver que ma volonté soit restaurée en toi. Tout bel et triomphante comme au début de l'humanité. The creatures rejected my will, although originally they lived in it. Although rejected, my will has not, however, withdrawn completely and wants to find his living space in creatures. Don't you want to be his first little living space? So, be careful. If you want to do one thing, don't do it by yourself, but ask my will to do it for you. In fact, if you do it by yourself, it will sound wrong, and if it is my will that does it, it will sound right. She will be in harmony with heaven. It shall be sustained by grace and divine power. It shall be the result of the operation of the Creator in the creature. It will have a divine fragrance. She shall embrace all creatures with one embrace, and all will feel in her the beneficial action of the Creator in the midst of creatures. I thought to myself, why is there such a great fear in me? Not to perfectly and completely fulfill God's most holy will to the point of losing consciousness of it. The mere thought of failing on this point traumatizes me. What would happen? What if I were to come out of the adorable will of my Creator, if only for a moment? While I was thinking about this, my kind Jesus came out of my interior and, taking my hands in his, he fucked them with inexpressible love, and then, pressing them on his chest, he said to me tenderly, "My daughter, how beautiful is my will operating by your hands. Your movements are wounds to me, but divine wounds, because they come from the depths of my will that dominates and triumphs in you. Thus, I feel hurt as by another myself. You are rightly afraid. If you left my will, even if only for a moment, what a tragic fall you would make. You would descend from the state of innocent Adam to the state of guilty Adam. As Adam was at the head of all human generations. By detaching himself from the will of his Creator, his human will introduced a worm into the roots of the tree of generations. All humans thus experience the ruin that this worm of human will has caused them from the beginning of humanity. Any act produced by a human will not connected to that of God creates an abyssal distance between the Creator and the creature. In what concerns holiness, beauty, nobility, light, science, etc. By withdrawing from the divine will, Adam distanced himself from his Creator, which had the effect of greatly reduce it, impoverish it and unbalance it. And not only him, but all the human generations that followed. When evil is at the root, the whole tree suffers. Therefore, my daughter, since I have called you to be at the head of the mission of my will must remake the links between you and the Creator. To eliminate the distance between your will and his will. In order to be able to form in you the root of a tree whose sap will be purely my will. If, subsequently, you were performing an act of your human will not connected to my will, Thou shalt introduce an unhealthy worm into the mission which I have entrusted to you and, like a second Adam, you would contaminate the root of the tree of my will that I am forming in you and you would endanger all those who want to graft on this tree. It is I who create this fear in you, that my will may reign constantly in you and may all the manifestations I have made to you bear fruit unceasingly in you, to form roots, trunk, branches, flowers, and fruits of the divine tree that I am forming in you, completely sheltered from your human will. In this way, thou shalt return to thy origin, all resplendent in the bosom of your Creator, and, satisfied with his original work of the creation of man found in you, the divinity will bring out of you his chosen people from thee. Thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive, so as not to contravene the work of my will in you. I love this work so much. It costs me so much that, jealously, I will use all my resources so that your human will never come to life. These words of Jesus surprised me, and I clearly saw the difference between an act in the human will and an act in the divine will. When it acts by its own will, the creature loses his likeness to his Creator, divests itself of the beauty it had when it was created, is covered with miserable rags, drag of the paw in the good, resembles the devil rather than God, and feeds on soiled food. Almost trembling, I tried to immerse myself deeper into the divine will and I called for my Heavenly Mother for help, so that together and in the name of all we may worship the divine will. Then heaven opened and my Jesus, his heart in celebration, said to me, Daughter of my will, you must know that when my will reigns in a soul, it appropriates everything that this soul does. Therefore, it was not you who appealed to my mother, but my will in you. As for my mother, by hearing herself challenged by the divine will, which has always been whole and triumphant in it, she understood that someone from the heavenly family was asking her to go to earth. She immediately said to all of heaven, let's go, it's someone from our family who calls us to fulfill family duties on earth. So they are all here with us, the Virgin, the saints, and the angels, to perform the act of worship that you want to do. And the divinity is there to receive this act. My will has such power that it can all enclosed and make everyone accomplish the same thing in one act. The difference between the soul that lets my will reign in it and that which lives by its ego is great. In the first case, it is the divine will that prays, acts, thinks, looks and suffers through the soul. To each of the movements of this soul, heaven and earth set in motion, so that all feel the power of God operating in the creature and recognize in it the nobility and transcendence of the Creator. All in heaven protect this soul, help him, defend it, and long for the day she will be with them in the heavenly homeland. And it's just the opposite for the one who lives by his own will, which is the key. Hell, miseries and inconstancy. He does not know how to open himself to anything other than evil and if he does any good, it is only in appearance. For there is in him the worm of his own will which gnaws away at everything. Therefore, even if it must cost you your life, never leave my will. In addition to suffering enormously from the absence of my sweet Jesus, I was oppressed by a multitude of thoughts jostling in my mind. I struggled between the hope that he wouldn't leave me alone for too long and the fear of never seeing him again. My kind Jesus took me by surprise, by filling myself totally with him, so that I no longer saw myself, but him alone in the middle of a huge sea of small flames, representing all truths relating to his divinity and his kind will. I would have liked to seize all these flames in order to know perfectly the one who is everything to me and to make it known to all. Anyway, it would be impossible for me to find the words to express these things, since my mind is too limited to contain them all. In addition to being lost before the divine immensity. Of course, I can understand some things a little bit. But celestial language is very different from earthly language. Therefore, I cannot find the words to make myself understood. When I am with Jesus, I have the same language as him and we understand each other perfectly. But when I find myself in my body, I can barely say a few things and I stammer like a child. As I swam in this sea of small flames, my beloved Jesus said to me, "It is true that the little newborn of my will participates to the Beatitudes, to the joy's end, to the bliss of the one who brought her into the light. All those flames you see in the sea of my will symbolize the secret Beatitudes, the joy's end, bliss, contained in my will. I say secret because _je have not yet manifested to anyone the totality of the Beatitudes contained in my will. Since there is no creature who has the necessary dispositions to receive them. These Beatitudes remain locked in the divinity until we can deposit them in the one who will live without interruption in our will. His will being one with ours. All divine doors will be opened to him and our most intimate secrets can be revealed to him. Heavenly joys and beatitudes can be shared with a creature to the extent that it can receive them. Every manifestation I make to you concerning my will is a beatitude from the bosom of the divinity. Not only do these beatitudes make you happy and prepare you to live better in my will, but they prepare you for new knowledge. Moreover, all of heaven is illuminated by these beatitudes coming out of our womb. Oh! How grateful the blesseds of heaven are to you and how they pray that I will continue these manifestations of my will to you. These beatitudes have been locked in us by the human will. Every act of the human will was a lock applied to them. Not only in time, but in the eternity. Every act of my will performed on earth. In the soul the seed of a beatitude, which she will enjoy in heaven. Without its seed, one cannot hope to obtain the plant. Therefore, I want you more and more deeply in my will. I felt immersed in a wonderful celestial atmosphere, completely immersed in the divine will. Finding in me the same will as them. All the acts of the divine will gave me a kiss. I gave them that kiss and I printed on everyone and I love you. They seemed to want to be recognized by me and get my approval. Then my sweet Jesus came out of my interior. With his divine hands. He bound me to the light in which I found myself so that I could no longer see but Jesus, his will and all that it was doing. What happiness, what joy! Jesus was also celebrating. He seemed so satisfied to see me in his will. That he lazy wanted to deal only with his will. That it may be complete in me and that it may triumph over everything. So that the purpose for which all things were created may be fully attained. Then he said to me, "My daughter, little newborn of my will, you must know that whoever is born in my will may be a mother and to give birth to many children of my will. To be a mother, it is necessary to have in oneself what it takes to form the life that one wants to bring to the light. It is done from his blood, flesh, and food continuously consumed. If one does not have in oneself a sufficient seed or substance, one cannot hope to be a mother. By the fact that you were born in my will, there is within you the necessary seed of fertility. We can say that every knowledge I have given you is a seed for a child of my will. Your continual acts in my will are abundant food allowing you to form these children in you, to present them to my will. They will eternally be the joy of the mother who gave birth to them. Every additional manifestation I make to you means a new birth orchestrated by my will. A new divine life for the good of creatures, and the decay of the human will for the benefit of the divine will. So you have to be very attentive. That nothing escapes you. Not even the smallest demonstration. For you would deprive me of one more child who would know my will, would like it, submit to his power and make it known. Then, I don't know why, I felt my usual fear quit his most holy will, if only for a moment. Then my kind Jesus returned, and with all love he said to me, "My daughter, why are you afraid? Listen, when you worry for fear of getting out of my will, it amuses me. For there is so much water in the sea of my will where you are, that you could not find the limits to be able to leave it. Wherever you direct your steps, right, left, forward or backward, you would walk, yes, but you would always be in the sea of my will. The water of the sea, it is you yourself who formed it. In fact, since my will is limitless, by your many acts in her, you have formed this sea from which you cannot escape. And your fear of coming out of your origins form waves that push you further into the sea. However, I don't blame you, because I know where you are and how you are. I am simply seeking to inspire you to live in peace in my will. I will surprise you with even more amazing things, which will make you forget everything, including your fears. And in peace, thou shalt sail on the sea of my will. And I, the divine captain, I will delight in guiding the one who lives entirely in our supreme will. May everything be for the glory of God and to my confusion. I am the most miserable of all creatures. Glory to the Lord.